Okay, so thank you everyone for coming to my talk today, the seminar that we're going to be talking about Are People Born Wicked? I hope everyone is semi-aware of Wicked, even if you haven't seen the film. So just to give me a bit of an idea how much detail I need to go into, a show of hands for how many people have seen The Wizard of Oz. It's a good start then, isn't it? At least we're all on some sort of platform there. How many people have seen the first Wicked film? How many people have seen the second Wicked film? How many people have heard me sing the entire Wicked soundtrack for the past 15 years? Yeah. So I just want to start off this by saying an apology, really, to my long-suffering parents at the front, because me and my best friend Charlotte, who's at the front as well, we went to see Wicked when we were 15, not that long ago, and we were in our second to last year of high school, and we were studying drama, and we went to London. The show had kind of just come out. We were all very excited about it. We did a little session at Pineapple Studios, and we learnt the Wizardmania song. So at the end, me and Charlotte will be performing the Wizardmania song. We won't be doing that, but since then, we've kind of had this affinity with Wicked, and it's been our thing. So I'm very privileged to be able to share our thing with you and also bring in my career. So my parents thought they got away with it when I stopped studying drama and theatre studies at A-level, yet I have managed to shoehorn this into now my psychology career. So thank you everyone for tolerating me and coming today to hear me talk about this. So I will just say there will be enough information about kind of background of characters, but unfortunately it's too late now. There will be spoilers for people that haven't seen the Wicked franchise. There's no small children here, so I don't need to say that, but obviously the film is PG, so there will be, I don't know how, but there will be kind of some discussions of certain themes within that, but nothing that's not already shown within the film. The last thing to say is I was given some tips from Ian, who helped me to write the press release for this, and he said to me, Sam, it's going to be great, and if all else fails, just start singing the songs. I'll tell you now, Ian has not heard me sing, and that advice, I won't take it. Don't worry. There will be some quotes kind of from the songs I'm going to be drawing information from. I will try my best not to sing them, but I do encourage audience participation. So those of you that have made it known to me now, Tom, I saw your hand up at the back as well. If you've made it known to me that you've seen it, when I start off one of the quotes, I will go, and you guys got to finish the kind of lyric for me. So I'm relying on certain people in the audience to do that, so don't let me down. So let's get on with it then. Are People Born Wicked? A psychological analysis of Elphaba Thropp. Should use this, Caroline, because you've lent it me ever so kindly. So just a disclaimer, I am going to be discussing some themes which might be kind of sensitive in nature, including some comments around trauma, bullying and discrimination. It is in relation to a fictional case, but if you do wish to leave, if this is triggering for you, then that's absolutely fine. Just kind of leave without disturbing anybody. If you are a university student or staff member, you know that you can contact the Life Lounge if you have any issues. And if you're a member of the public, I've just put the Samaritans and Shout contact details on there. But like I said, the film is PG, so it shouldn't be anything too distressing, unless I sing, and then that might be too distressing for everybody. So, also, I'm just resisting the urge, but I worked at McDonald's 4.5 years when I was doing my undergrad, and it's just, muscle memory is just trying to ask me to ask you to, can I take your order? So I'm trying to fight that, so just bear with me while I get used to just ignoring this. It's the first time wearing a headset, it's all very exciting. It's either that or I sing my karaoke song, which is Believed by Cher, which I also won't do. So, an introduction then. Some of you know me, I've worked with some of you before, some of you are my students, some of you are my friends and family, but just to put everybody on the same page, I'm Dr Samantha Walkden, and I'm a chartered psychologist with the British Psychological Society, and I'm a senior lecturer in forensic psychology. I'm also the deputy, alongside Carol Island, leading the MSc in forensic psychology, which is a stage 1 accredited programme here at the university. I know some of you are interested in that. And I also teach a little bit on the undergraduate programme with my colleague, Dr Caroline Mead. So if you guys are here for the undergraduate programme as well, we can answer some questions later. I worked for 8 years in low-secure forensic mental health services, which are for adult males with complex mental health needs who are sectioned under the Mental Health Act. And I learned a lot whilst working there that kind of inspired me to work within academia and do research around stigma development and understanding people's perceptions towards particularly individuals that have schizophrenia and an offending history. So I'm going to draw on different research that was kind of pivotal and background research from my thesis with kind of some theories and psychological principles within that as well. You can also find me on TikTok, most of you know, but I'm Psych Up Your Life on there as well, and I share some content around academia, what it's like to be an academic, research, and also just usually a little bit of Sigmund Freud slander as well. Sorry to my counselling colleagues that are in the room. So an overview of what we're going to cover today then. So I've just noticed this has gone quieter. Is everyone okay with that? Is everyone okay though? I think we'll turn it down because of the feedback on the live stream, but if everyone can hear me, then that's fine. Thank you. Probably because my voice is louder than when Mark tested it before. So what is psychology? What's the point? What's the point in psychology and its function as a discipline? How do we analyse people's behaviour, and how indeed do other people analyse our behaviour? Consider some theories that can explain Elphaba's behaviour in this sense and her development as a person. So we know that she starts off in the Wicked series as Elphaba and she progresses into the Wicked Witch of the West. The importance of perceptions and attitudes, that's mainly my area of research, and I think it is very important to understand how we perceive and attribute things to other people. What are the benefits of studying psychology? What do I think the benefits are? What will be the benefits to you guys if indeed you were going to study psychology? And then there'll be an opportunity for any kind of questions at the end as well. So let's get into this then. What's psychology? So I'm not going to read from the slides, you can all read. But it's just thinking about studying human behaviour, the mind, how people remember things, what the influences are, mental processes, and those social and cultural influences as well. My students will know if they're in the room that I talk a lot about social and cultural context. It's very important for how we're thinking about behaviour. So I'm going to draw on that today in terms of the social and culture. I keep feeling like I'm going quiet again. Social and cultural kind of background of the land of Oz and the different kind of arenas and environments that we're in during the film. So studying psychology helps to understand why people do what they do. It's as simple as that. I like to pop this one up. A lot of psychologists will use kind of the iceberg analogy in different ways. For me, understanding human behaviour, we only scratch the surface with what we know about people. If you have friends and family members, you might kind of have a reverse of that, and you might know slightly more than what you don't. But when we're thinking about understanding the case study we're going to look at today, I'm hopefully going to present you with some psychological theories that will help you to delve underneath the water and really think about those background factors that might be influencing and impacting Elphaba as she kind of progresses through. It just got me doing evils to the person that I can hear through there. Theories and research in psychology then, why is it important to use theories and research? Why don't we just go around saying, well, I know why that person did that, I know this, and not have any support for that? So academic opinions are different to opinions. It's okay to have opinions, but we're not talking about kind of evidence that's supporting that. So academic opinions, which is hopefully what I'm presenting to you today, is thinking about those theoretical underpinnings. It has to be research informed. I can't teach psychology to my students and just turn up every week for 3 hours and just go, just trust me. Just trust me. And just say, sometimes I do that, don't laugh. Trust me, I'm a psychologist. But it's important to have that research-informed evidence and be evidence-led. So an example, just for those of you that aren't students that might not know, on some of my slides, you will see an example. This might be a quote from the film, it might be a theory, it might be a bias that I'm drawing on. You will see that, and then you'll say this next to it. So it's someone's name, and it says et al. Et al is just a fancy kind of Latin way of saying and other people, basically. Someone I did my undergrad with thought that Al was on every paper, and she said to me, Sam, why is Al such a good researcher? And I was like, are you joking, Emma? Like, it's and other people. So it is other people. So in this case, it will be Smith's research from 2025. So I will reference that. You don't have to worry about it. It's just to show you that I have some foundations for the things that I'm discussing. And if you're students and you want to make a note of that or take any pictures of the slides, you are absolutely welcome to do that as well. So the core areas of psychology. Some of you might have been studying it, but just so we're all on the same kind of page here. There are 5 core areas in psychology as stipulated by the British Psychological Society. The first one being individual differences, which I don't really need to explain, kind of does what it says on the tin there. Everybody is different, everybody has different experiences. The next one, my personal favourite, social psychology. So thinking about our social networks, our interaction with others, society, group expectations, conformity. Some of you might have heard of the Stanford Prison Experiment. That was one of the big social experiments within forensic psychology. And that thinks about how likely people are to conform or adapt to a role that they're assigned within a psychological experiment. Developmental psychology, so how people grow, changes across their lifespan, and areas such as language development, moral understanding, and emotional growth. Biological is how the brain, the nervous system, hormones, and genetics might influence behaviour, and it draws that link between biology and psychology. And finally, we have cognitive, which is around the mental processes, perceptions, memory, thinking, problem solving, decision making, how people acquire and store that information. Okay? So this is the order I'm going to be presenting them in today during this talk, because for me, these are the areas that contribute kind of from the least to the most in terms of understanding Elphaba's behaviour. And to be fair, I'd maybe go as far as to say most people's behaviour as well. So obviously today we're coming to see if people are born wicked or if they have wickedness thrust upon them. So I'm going to go through biological, then developmental, cognitive, and finish off with social, and then also present some kind of biases and theories that might be more integrative, so they're considering kind of all of those within their model as well. So this is the debate in psychology. When I told some people about this, they replied and said, oh, so it's just a nature versus nurture lecture. Yeah, it is. But we are discussing today, are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? From the first song in the franchise, No One Mourns the Wicked. I'm going to try not to keep singing the songs in my head every time I mention the song. Good news. So, who is Elphaba Thropp, and how did she become the Wicked Witch of the West? A brief overview for those of you that don't know. Just to mention, if you have seen The Wizard of Oz but not any of the other franchise, they kind of can't really occur at the same time. It's kind of like, you know, in Marvel bring out millions of superhero films and you're like, 1 minute. It's kind of different kind of multiverse, if you will. The Wicked Witch of the West is presented as very villainized in the original Wizard of Oz, kind of going after Dorothy, things like that. It isn't really the same. So whilst the principles and kind of the background is similar, Wicked is the untold story of the witches of Oz. So it talks about Glinda the Good and Elphaba Thropp. And I don't think her name is ever explicitly mentioned in the Wizard of Oz. I think she's just referred to as the Wicked Witch of the West. So an overview of what happens kind of in Wicked. So Elphaba's born in the land of Oz, the same place where the Wizard of Oz is set. If it's not obvious by now, she has bright green skin. She's described as intelligent, passionate, idealistic, and fiercely independent, much like myself. Her unusual appearance and sharp intellect sets her apart from other people, including her family and peers. And I think that's quite important to kind of recognize as we go through, that even those people that are the closest to her can't really identify with her. Much of her story in Wicked revolves around the desire to fight oppression and corruption in Oz. And I will take you through that and explain that if you're kind of not used to it. Her rebellion and use of powerful magic ultimately earns her the label of wicked, even though her intentions are indeed noble. So I asked you guys, earlier this week I sent out a link to this, and I asked you to pop down the words that came to mind when you thought about Elphaba. So what's come up here on this word cloud that's been generated by you, these are the words that were predominantly mentioned. So most people said misunderstood, which I think is an interesting one for us to take through this talk today. Powerful, strong, green. And then the kind of smaller words, but still important, villainized, targeted, determined, unloved, innocent is interesting, witch, scapegoated, brave, unwicked, passionate, victim, trauma, lonely, and protective. So I think to be fair, that's a really good job, guys. Well done. I think that is quite a good representation of what we think when we think about Elphaba and her story. So I'll start off with my least favourite, but it's worth an honourable mention. So biological theories and influences for this character. So we get from, again, in No One Mourns a Wicked, it feels like a super long song, that one. From the moment she was born, she was well different, and that's Galinda's reflection, telling her story. We also have, you guys can finish this one off, her dad is involved in this as well, which is bizarre, kind of screaming adjectives about Elphaba when they first see her be born. So I'll say it, you guys say the end bit. The baby is unnaturally green. She is green. That was an easy one. For those of you that haven't watched it, that was the easiest one. So it only gets harder from here. So for this one, we're going to be thinking about the evidence I have picked out. Some of my colleagues might disagree or might see other things. If you go and watch the film, the first time enjoy it, the second time I went with my friend again, then made some notes. Tried to enjoy it as much as I could. Can't enjoy any films anymore, so yeah, there is that. But the key evidence I'm going to be drawing on today is the mother's substance misuse during pregnancy, trauma and impact on physiology, genetics and the fact that she is different to others, and physical abnormalities. So, the substance misuse from the mother, some of you will know, but when Elphaba's mother, before she is conceived, her father is the mayor of Munchkinland, and he leaves to go to a night do, or whatever mayors of Munchkinland do. He leaves, and then another man knocks at the door, and he's drinking kind of a green liquid. And he comes inside and he gives the liquid to her. She drinks some of the liquid. Things are going on. I don't have to tell you the rest. And the night that she's conceived, her mother is encouraged to consume the substances which we know as a green elixir. Researchers found that when people consume substances with it during pregnancy, it can have an impact on the biology of the fetus that is growing. I don't know whether that was a one-off for Elphaba's mother. We know that that person later on, spoiler alert, is actually the wizard, and the wizard is Elphaba's father. That doesn't get revealed to him until the end, but we do know that from kind of the flashbacks, and also if you know what Jeff Goldblum's singing voice is, you also know that if you listen to the soundtrack. But we do know that he later consumed substances, again, the same green drink that Galinda recognises, and that's how she links the two. So when he's in the cage, he's drinking it, and he offers it to Galinda, and he says, do you want some of this? It takes the edge off. So maybe we're inclined to believe it's some sort of anti-anxiety medication. Either way, the mother consumes that the night that she is conceived. Thinking about the impact of kind of early trauma, researchers found that early trauma can impact on physiology with developing fetuses and also with newborns. If a mother is distressed, I'm guessing from their response that they were quite distressed when the child was green. And genetic and environmental contributors also mediate this relationship between violent victimization and criminal behavior. And even though we're not talking about criminal behavior here, it's an important link to think about the fact that she might have been victimized based on this as well. Moving on to the kind of physical abnormalities, the researchers suggested that people who look different to the societal norm are often treated differently, usually in a negative way. It's also explored the impact of physical abnormalities on developing interpersonal relationships, that's just relationships with other people, mainly in terms of the stigma and the influence that this impact has. And again, there's just some kind of older references there about that. And whilst Elphaba's abnormality of being green didn't lead to her becoming evil or being perceived as wicked, it would have no doubt contributed to the societal response towards her and the way that other people behave towards her, in turn impacting her behaviour in this kind of cycle. So now the biological stuff, so we can do the interesting stuff. So developmental theories and kind of influences here. As soon as she is born, her father screams, "Take it away," not once but twice. She is then reared by another character, who I'll get onto later. And Elphaba says in The Wizard and I, "No father is not proud of you, no sister acts ashamed." When she's talking about potentially being able to work with the wizard, she thinks that this will make her family proud because her family have never been proud of her in terms of her development and things like that. So the key evidence for this one for me is that immediate rejection from her father, the mother dying during childbirth of her younger sister, which she is blamed for also, Sibling is physically disabled. The nanny has main caretaking responsibilities. We've got some comments about attachment in here as well, and also adverse childhood experiences, commonly referred to as ACEs. So, parental rejection. So rejection and or neglect can impact a child's understanding of safety. And this is some really kind of foundational research that you would learn if you studied developmental psychology in terms of Ainsworth. Some of you will know The Strange Situation. And that was about measuring attachment with children to their primary caregiver. That perceived parental rejection in childhood predicts psychological adjustment and rejection sensitivity in adulthood. And we know that Elphaba as a character as well does really struggle with that kind of sensitivity to making friends and forming relationships. And this might be because of that early attachment with her parents. Individuals who have a negative relationship in childhood report more anxiety and avoidance in later romantic relationships. And they also might be hesitant to engage in these relationships because they just don't feel anyone cares about them. Because if your mother and your father don't care about you, why would anybody else? And that's kind of the mentality that she has. So attachment theory. Monotropic attachment, I'm not going to explain every single concept, but some people will be like, what type of attachment, Sam? So that's for you guys. Monotropic attachment, proposed by big developmental psychologist John Bowlby, says that a strong, important primary bond with one specific caregiver, usually the mother, is crucial and vital for a child's relationship. And this serves as a model for future. Some of you might already be seeing where I'm going with this in terms of Elphaba not having a mother figure, but we will get there. The primary attachment is a unique and irreplaceable connection, and it provides a safe base for the child to be able to explore the world and come back and have that feedback from their parents as well. We're going to revisit this attachment issue because it links later on to the social section as well. So for those of you that aren't aware, there are three categories when we talk about adverse childhood experiences. There is neglect, there is abuse, and then there is kind of family dysfunction. So the first one, abuse. In terms of Elphaba, these are all of the adverse childhood experience people could have. These are just what I feel Elphaba has. There is emotional abuse from her parents in terms of them not wanting to spend time with her, initial rejection, and there's also favoritism with her sister Nessa Rose. Some of you might know her as the Wicked Witch of the East, the worst song in the franchise, arguably, but anyway. But Elphaba experiences that rejection, shame, and blame as a result of that. In terms of neglect, there is primary caregiver neglect here, and she is raised by a bear. Bear with me because it's wicked. She is raised by Dulce Bear, who is a member of a different race to Elphaba. So again, she can't really identify because that's not the same role model as what she would be looking for in her parents. She's not seeing that representation. She's asked to take on a protector role from an early age. We know this when we see the flashback of her looking after Nessa Rose. So her sister is physically disabled in a wheelchair. Elphaba is blamed for this by her parents because Elphaba was born green, and her father, who she believes to be her father, the mayor of Munchkinland, thinks that this is because of what her mother was eating during pregnancy. We know it's not. We know it's because she drank the elixir from the wizard, but he doesn't know that. So he makes her eat a substance, can't remember what it's called, while she's pregnant, which then results in Nessa Rose being born disabled. So they blame Elphaba again for that projection. She's told from her dad that she has to look after her sister, and she's not allowed to have a childhood. She is caring for her sister in that sense, and she's not really having that time to just be a child and just understand the world and have that love and affection. In terms of household dysfunction, there is the death of her mother and obviously the disconnect with her father. And again, we don't know if she was frequently using it, but we do know that she did use substances as well. There's this one on moral development, so shout out to my colleague Jackie, who's joining us online, because she just checked through these for me, because her thesis was about moral development in children. I'm not going to read these things out because it'd be difficult for me, but you guys can read those. There's two types. The first one is when a child starts to develop, they think about the rules of the world being set by their parents. So you believe everything that your parents kind of tell you between the ages of kind of 5 to 9, but you're testing that a little bit. Then when you get to the age of between kind of 9 and 10, you get that realism and you think, this is negotiable. I can push these boundaries a little bit. Maybe other people aren't having strict parenting, so maybe I can push this a little bit. In terms of Elphaba, she might not have been getting that because she was so disconnected from her parents. However, she does develop a strong sense of morality, as those of you who have seen the films will know. And this depends on kind of what she believes is true and the consequences of her actions. So before she sings For Good with Galinda, which is a song that's about friendship and learning from other people, she says to Galinda, when Galinda says, let's go back to Oz and I'll tell everyone that you're not wicked. I'll make sure that they accept you and we can all just be happy, we can all just live a good life. And she says, no, it's kind of gone too far now. I have to be wicked so you can be good. So she sees the sense of that perception that people are putting onto her. If she's wicked, she may as well take the fall so that Galinda can kind of go on with her life and be the good witch. There is this stage of post-conventional morality here that Kohlberg talks about, and not everybody reaches this level of morality. So it's about social contracts and individual rights, thinking about the differences in opinions. The fact that Elphaba is so intent on exposing the wizard because she finds out that he's not actually magical. He can't read this magical book, which is called the Grimoire, and that's why they need her. And he also wants to get rid of animals that can speak and suppress them. There doesn't seem to be any particular reason apart from the fact that he doesn't think animals should have the right to speak, which Elphaba doesn't agree with, so she goes up against these standards, even though he is arguably the most powerful person in Oz. In terms of universal principles, this is about abstract reasoning, and it follows those internal principles of justice, even though they conflict with the laws and the rules. So nobody else seems to think that the wizard has a problem. Nobody else cares that these animals are disappearing, but Elphaba does care about that, and she has this strong sense of justice. The wizard says when he's singing Wonderful, him, Galinda, and Elphaba's not really singing it, she's just looking quite confused while they're dancing around. But he says to her, the truth is just what everyone agrees on. He doesn't really care if people find out that he isn't powerful because he says, they already think I am. It doesn't matter if I tell them I'm not. People already think I am, and once they think that, there's no going back. So he's happy to go along with what everybody else thinks, but she isn't. In terms of a few examples, she says within Defying Gravity that I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. She can see that these rules are being set by somebody else and she doesn't agree with them. And research says only about 21% of the population have this advanced stage of morality. So it's likely that a lot of people who were around Elphaba at the time weren't able to understand her development. Even though she explained it to them, they just wouldn't understand it anyway. Elphaba reaches this level in relation to those universal principles and thinking about the way that she stands up against him and the morality kind of overriding those laws and social approval. She believes in the dignity and respect of all beings, particularly animals who can speak as that minoritized group, and she's willing to break the laws and those expectations to protect those marginalized people, even if it damages her reputation or safety. I think that this is worth a mention because there's a lot of discourse around this online as well, for those of you that kind of read up on this. That Elphaba says this within The Wizard and I, and she says, this weird quirk I've tried to suppress or hide as a talent that could be helped, I'll make good. And I believe that she's kind of reflecting on her experiences. And this could be it could be as surface level as her being a different skin color. But I think that it's a lot more than that because she has reached this level of morality that takes her kind of up from everybody else. Neurodivergence is both biological and developmental in nature, and these are some of the traits that are kind of associated with that. I won't read through them all, but kind of the difficulty understanding social norms or misreading social cues. She can come across as quite blunt or direct when she just wants to get her message across, but she does have a history of kind of being misunderstood and being othered by other people as well. Now, some cognitive theories and kind of influences. Was I really seeking good or just seeking attention is what she says in No Good Deed. And for this key evidence, I wanted to think about personality traits, self-doubt and self-efficacy, the sense of self, faulty schemas, and attribution theory as well. So some of you will be aware of personality theory models. So we've got the Goldberg Big Five Ocean model, and then we've also got the Eysenck more simplified model of extroversion, neuroticism, and psychoticism. So I'm going to focus on the more simplified version. So in terms of this, just to kind of present my evidence and interpretation of that, in terms of extroversion, I believe that she has quite low traits of this. So she's not very outgoing, she isolates herself, and she's quite reflective. Some examples of this is that she doesn't want to be popular, she doesn't want to go to the Osdurst ballroom, and she says to Galinda again in For Good, you're the only friend I've ever had. She doesn't have very wide social networks. For neuroticism, she could be seen as emotionally unstable and anxious. I believe that that's a suppression of kind of the attitudes that she's received from other people. But in Defying Gravity, Glinda does say to her, why couldn't you stay calm for once instead of flying off the handle? That might be an indication of that emotional instability there. Some examples that sometimes she doesn't act well to stress, and she can be seen to act impulsively by others. In terms of psychoticism, there's a bit of a mix. I am by no means diagnosed as Elphaba as a psychopath. That's not the same thing. But there's some mixed traits here. So the plus for that one, for a higher, she is more antisocial. On a negative, she's more emotional, and potential for kind of revenge or justice. Some people are showing it, some people in Oz are interpreting that as revenge, when actually Elphaba just wants justice. She doesn't want revenge on people that have wronged her. She just wants that sense of justice. And some examples in this might be that other people say that she's lacking empathy by doing the things that she does. I don't believe she is, but that's the perception. She might be seen to have lower impulse control and potentially more prone to violence. This is what ChatGPT told me that her personality type might potentially be. And I kind of agree with that one. So this is credit of 16 personalities, the graphic. You can go on there and answer some questions about yourself, find a little bit more about yourself if that's something that's interesting to you. It's good if you're doing any sort of reflective work to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and I've talked about that in my applied experience group. But this may fit with Elphaba because she is quite analytical, skeptical of authority. Independent sometimes to a fault, motivated by logic and strong internal morals, and she's strategic, reflective, and she's quite private and intense with her emotions as well. Just a bit more evidence that she's only one of the people that stands up to the wizard, who's the most powerful person kind of within Oz, and she can see the systemic injustice before others. And I think if Elphaba was a kind of general member of society doing this, she'd probably be labelled as woke, wouldn't she? Let's be honest, trying to stand up for the rights of marginalised people. So schemas, some of you might have heard of schemas, just a quick one on this. So they're mental frameworks or organisations of thoughts or patterns that can help people to understand and interpret information. They help fill in the gaps and guide our expectations. So when I'm teaching schemas, the easiest way I find to do this is asking someone to imagine going out for food. And it's almost impossible now that you've not got an activation of that last time you went out for food, the people that you were with, the environment that you were in, the food that you were eating. I'll always order the exact same absolutely plain meal, but I try and go somewhere where my partner is able to have a bit more variety because it's not fair that I just want to have the same beige food all the time. But going out for food, you'll all have your own experiences of that. If we asked somebody that was maybe in a third world country what their experience was of going out for food, they probably wouldn't be able to identify any of that or fill in those gaps. So if you start telling me a story of something that happened to you when you were out for food, I don't need to go, well, can you explain that entire situation to me because I don't get it. My brain can fill in all of the gaps, and then you can tell me your story. For Elphaba and for the people that are kind of perceiving her, these mental stories develop through those personal experiences. So if every time they're being exposed to Elphaba, they're being told, mainly by Madame Morrible, that she is evil, that she is wicked, that every day more wicked, they're more likely to believe that because she's filling in those gaps within their brain. So the next time they see Elphaba, they immediately go, wicked. They don't bother waiting to see what happens with the situation. They can shape what people do and don't notice and how they remember and interpret events. So they can help you to make quick judgments on situations. It'd be really difficult if every time you went for food, your brain deleted everything you've ever eaten and you had to kind of go through everything again. You usually know what you're going to order, what you kind of like. But thinking about this, it can cause memory distortions or rigid thinking, and that's what happens in terms of perceptions of Elphaba. So a specific one that I wanted to mention is the rescuer schema. So this is a pattern when the person feels a compulsive need to help other people, often at the expense of their own needs. It's a psychological concept that involves this subconscious self-motivated intervening in someone's lives, often against their will. We're going to look at the Cartman drama triangle in a second, but the rescuer aims to solve another person's problems, but they become enmeshed with the victim that they're trying to help, and they get this connection then between them and the victim. So this is an example here where we have the persecutor on one side of a triangle, the rescuer, and then the victim, and there's this kind of interlink. This is from No Good Deed, and she says, no good deed goes unpunished, all helpful urges should be circumvented. And she's saying that she's trying to help people, But everybody's just perceiving this as a threat and that it's a problem. So she's just going to stop helping people. She's not going to try and be nice anymore. I've got an example here. I wonder if anyone would want to make a suggestion, not to put any pressure on anybody, but anyone that has seen the film, can you think, obviously we know that the rescuer is going to be Elphaba. Can we maybe think of any examples of who the persecutor might be and who the victim might be in terms of the franchise? Has anyone got any thoughts? Yeah? Yeah, absolutely. Well done. Thank you for that. So the persecutor can be the wizard, Mary Marble, or potentially Glinda sometimes as well. And the victim could be anyone who is kind of a result of the actions of them, but they are perceiving that kind of Elphaba is being enmeshed with the prosecutor. So the example that I've got here is the wizard as a persecutor, Elphaba as a rescuer, and then we have the victim as the lion. Elphaba is trying to help the lion. Arguably, it's actually Fiero who helps the lion. But Elphaba is trying to help the lion because she knows that if he's kept in a cage, he will lose the ability to speak. And that's something that the wizard has asked to happen, that all animals are removed and put into cages. She's trying to rescue the lion, and ultimately then, the audacity of this lion then comes back and starts telling people that he is now cowardly because he wasn't able to develop and speak out for himself. So he is now a coward because Elphaba rescued him. And if she would have left him, he would have been fine, living in a cage. But that's just one of the examples there. Now the best bit, the social theories and influences. So let all odds be agreed, I'm wicked through and through. And she finally kind of accepts, well, do you know what? If you want me to be wicked, I'll just be wicked. The key evidence for this one is probably the bulk of it. So her relationships, the role modeling, manipulation, and labeling theory. So from the minute she kind of arrives at Shiz, and she isn't supposed to actually go to Shiz, which is a university, her sister is going and she's been told to go and support Nessa Rose. And everyone just stares at her and she goes, fine, let's get this over with. I'm not seasick. I didn't eat grass as a child. Yes, I've always been green. And it's the fact that she feels like that's the first thing she needs to say to people rather than letting her kind of get to know them. So the students judge her based on her skin color and treat her as strange and threatening before they even know her at all. And Glinda even says to her, she kind of looks shocked and she says, you're green. And Elphaba's like, oh, yeah. Because she's used to that reaction from other people. It makes her defensive and she experiences kind of teasing and exclusion in all aspects of her life. So to go a bit further into this as well, in The Wizard and I, she does say, since folks here seemed, to an observed degree, seem fixated on your verdigris, meaning they're just obsessed with the fact that she's green, like she just wants them to get over it. Just get over it. Yes, I'm green. It's not a thing that needs to come up every single time, but this is just a perception that she's constantly faced with. This leads to her avoiding social situations. Her frustration is sometimes coming out as sarcasm or anger. And because she is acting in that way, people are then justified in saying, well, we think she's horrible. She's being kind of passive-aggressive with us, so we're just going to bully her even more. So it's kind of a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that we'll get around to as well. So it leads to rejection with her defensive behavior as more reasons for them to carry on rejecting her. When a person's bullied, they often internalize that negative judgment, and that's why she says, well, if you're all agreed, then I guess I'm wicked, and she finally accepts that. Research has found that this can lead to lower self-esteem, a reluctance to trust other people, and a fear of forthcoming kind of friendships and relationships. And ultimately, she grows into this self-belief that she just has to rely on herself. She can't speak to other people, nobody else is going to support her, and that's what leads to her kind of rebellion. I want to mention this. I've said it a little bit, and someone brought up Madame Morrible, but every day more wicked, all of ours is ever on alert. And this is said at the start of the second Wicked film for good. And this message is constantly put out by Madame Morrible, who somehow just elects herself as a press secretary, even though she was a teacher at the school. So she's the press secretary, and she's the one in charge of like informing people about things. There's a lot of propaganda here. You can think of real-life examples of propaganda as well, I'm sure. But you see her developing a lot of leaflets, pictures of Elphaba as this kind of grotesque person, dramatizing a lot of her features to make her look even more undesirable, and throwing out all of these flyers to pass that information off. And this links into what we know about confirmation bias and availability heuristics. So confirmation bias is when people will seek out information that already confirms a pre-existing belief that they have. They're not interested in trying to find out, is Elphaba actually wicked? If someone who's in a real powerful position is telling you that, and all the information you have access to is just reinforcing that, you're more likely to believe it. And that's also linking to that availability heuristic. There's a scene at the start where Madame Marable's putting loads of posters in, and they're literally flying out in kind of like hundreds, and they're littering the street. Elphaba's not got a chance of trying to convince anybody that she's not wicked at this point. So to move on to kind of the relationships and analyse this a little bit further, she's experienced that early rejection that we've already discussed, and she might anticipate rejection from other people. Her unlikely friendship with Glinda is positive. Glinda is popular and socially skilled. There's a song that's entirely around her popularity, and also trying to make Elphaba more popular. While Elphaba is misunderstood, defiant, but their relationship does evolve from this rivalry into a close-knit friendship when they sing for good to each other. That includes Because I Knew You, and she's kind of saying to her friends that because of the impact that other people have had on her, that's the person that she is today, which if that's not an explanation of social psychological theories, I'm not sure what is. So let's go in a little bit further. If anyone else is chronically online, I just have to do this for the people online as well because it's a thing at the minute. Does this mean anything to anyone? A few people are smiling. So Madame Marable, on the press release, Michelle Yeoh has gone really hard into her character who is a very wicked witch. So there's the thing online at the minute where she's going around the press release and she's doing Madame Marble, flip it around, wicked witch. And she's doing that quite a lot at the minute. So some of you have kind of seen that. And she's really leaning into this fact that she is really the wicked witch in the story, if you guys are kind of aware of that. Dr. Dillerman down here, a little inspiration of mine. So Madame Marable, in the purple there, couldn't have made a name that sounds more like horrible if they tried, really. She removed the only positive role model that Elphaba had, which was Dr. Dillerman, who is in the bottom corner here. He was an animal that was teaching at Shiz University, one of the last ones, and Elphaba sees him later on locked in a cage and he's lost the ability to speak, and that's what really kind of flips that switch in Elphaba. Arguably, she manipulates Elphaba for her powers. At the start, when Elphaba goes to Shiz, someone tries to push Nessa Rose in the wheelchair, and if you've ever had any engagement with someone who's in a wheelchair, it's very disrespectful to just presume that they want pushing. But somebody tries to push her, and Elphaba says, leave her alone, she can do it herself, and they're not listening, so she tries to defend her sister and ultimately causes a little bit of a ruckus, like with her hands and everything kind of flies up. Madame Marable says that that was her, and she goes, oh, I'm just showing you all the powers, and like kind of defends Elphaba. So she goes, oh, thank you, and goes to this role model, and then says, thank you for supporting me. And she goes, we'll help you get those powers under control, and I'll let you meet the wizard. And then Elphaba sings The Wizard and I, and she's so inspired, and she's like, if I'm with the wizard, my family are going to be proud of me. He's really going to help me. They don't. But she thinks at this point that she's kind of inspired by these two role models. There's grooming kind of involved in that as well, because she is a vulnerable person in that regard. She doesn't have many friends, and she's got these adversities and these experiences in the past. And a shout out to Professor Carol Ireland, who is doing this research at the minute around exploitation. There's not a lot of research out there considering child criminal exploitation, and that's something that's currently ongoing to kind of consider those early experiences of people being exploited by others in terms of criminal involvement as well. Thinking about the wizard, Elphaba believes that the wizard will see her for who she truly is. She even says, I don't mind if the wizard says that my exterior should match the kind of person that I am. If he offers to make me not green, I'll accept it, but I don't really mind. Well, if she's thinking about that, she is starting to internalize those thoughts that other people are telling her that being green is kind of an atrocity. Even her dad says that she's atrocious at one point. This is a lyric from I'm a Sentimental Man, which the wizard sings to Elphaba and Glinda. And he says, helping you with your ascent helps me feel so parental. He doesn't know that he's actually her dad, but he says, I never had any kids, and by kind of fostering you guys and supporting you with your powers, that helped me. So she's like, sure, I'll be inspired by you. You know, you're the most powerful person in Oz. And she wants to make her family proud as well. This leads on to kind of manipulation here. When someone looks up to people that they admire and trust, it can be easier for them to be influenced or manipulated later on. If someone's seen as powerful or talented, people might just obey them without questioning their intentions. An example of this, some of you might know the Milgram obedience experiments. People were asked by an experimenter to continue administering electric shocks to participants, and they carried on up to a lethal level because somebody in the lab coat was encouraging them, and that was a full experiment about kind of authority figures. Elphaba has always wanted to fit in, and she lacks both of her kind of figures in her life in terms of her dad not listening to her, and her mother has obviously passed away. This makes her more susceptible to that manipulation, specifically from a maternal figure like Madame Morrible. She's told repeatedly that her powers will make good. So why wouldn't she believe them? Nobody has listened to her entire life. Now she's getting this connection from somebody saying, you're good, you'll be able to use this. However, when she eventually sees Chistery, one of the flying monkeys, reveals kind of a lair where the wizard is, and she goes in and she sees all of these animals that are caged when the wizard just said, no, I'm not doing that, I'll let them all go, it's not that deep. It is that deep. There's like a full kind of cage, a cave of all of these animals in there. And Elphaba goes in, she realizes what's going on, she just made a deal with him to work with him, and then she thinks, do you know what, this guy's lying, he can't be trusted. And she turns around and the wizard's coming in and he goes, it's not what it seems, you know, Elphaba, some animals can't be trusted. And she looks at the wizard and she goes, I know that now. And she is talking about the wizard being an animal that she can't trust and other people can't trust. Thinking about influence, a positive influence in her life, it doesn't start off that way, but Galinda says it's not about aptitude. So just for context, Galinda sings a song where she says, she's trying to tell Elphaba that being popular is more important than being good or being right, basically. And she says, when I see depressing creatures with unprepossessing features, I remind them on their own behalf to think of celebrated heads of state who were especially great communicators. Did they have brains and knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were popular. So I remembered all that. I don't have any notes on here. I'm just reading so I have to turn around. And it's a good job I didn't sing that one because I was really wanting to. But she's just saying to her, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't. And Elphaba's like, I don't really vibe with this, to be honest. And obviously, Galinda does eventually kind of come round to Elphaba's way of thinking as well, and they are quite good for each other. So people copy the behaviours of those that they look up to. And ultimately, Galinda starts to look up to Elphaba rather than looking up to Madame Morrible and the wizard. Charismatic people might use this to kind of praise or guilt people into controlling them. I can't mention any specific examples because I had to sign a waiver with the university saying that I wouldn't talk about anything controversial, but you guys can think of your own examples if you wish to. And they can exploit that kind of bond in the future. Initially, she's kind of coaxed in to read the Grimoire, which is a magical book that only especially magical people can read from, and she realizes the wizard can't actually read it. She's influenced into kind of saying, the monkeys have always wanted to fly. Do you think you could make that happen? She does, and then she realizes the monkeys are in a lot of pain because they've grown wings. She can't reverse a spell from the Grimoire. So what she does is she tries to kind of justify that and explain it, but then because she realizes Madame Morrible and the wizard are trying to exploit her and are not good people, they then turn her into being wicked because she's given those powers to the monkeys that are then used as the wizard's spies. Due to this influence, Elphaba is faced with no choice but to flee, which then makes her appear more guilty. If you're saying that someone's wicked and then they run away, people are going to believe that you are wicked, aren't they? This aspect of kind of charisma and power should be considered in relation to Galinda, who does go along with those kind of beliefs of the wizard and Madame Morrible for a while. She knows that Elphaba isn't wicked, but she plays her part within that, and Elphaba ultimately tells Galinda to play that part in order to eventually get rid of the wizard and Madame Morrible. In terms of intimate relationships, it's a good picture of Jonathan Bailey. So Fiyero has quite a different outlook on life compared to Elphaba. He sings a song in the first part, which is called Dancing Through Life, which I'm trying to take on that vibe a little bit more myself, but is basically just about having fun. Like, life's not that deep. You don't have to be involved in all the politics. Just have fun in your life and just get through it. Be shallow is the vibe of the song. She's not really interested in him at the start. She's a bit like, you're very immature, you're quite shallow, and even admits to it in the song. He's not bothered about being shallow. He doesn't mind. He says it's easier to get through life being shallow and being brainless. Spoiler alert, which ultimately is foreshadowing because he is the Scarecrow. So everyone's like, what? So ultimately, he turns around and helps Elphaba. She feels seen, she feels accepted and valued, and they sing the song together, As Long As You're Mine, and he says, somehow I've fallen under your spell, and it's a bit of a joke between them because he hasn't actually put her under a physical spell. It's more that they're kind of saying that they're in love with each other, and it was unrequited kind of in the first half, but now it's mutual. Unlike most people, he looks beyond her appearance and reputation. He says that she's beautiful when they're singing As Long As You're Mine, and she says, you don't have to lie to me. And he says it's about seeing things differently, meaning that she's a beautiful soul and she's a beautiful person. She's also not unattractive, she's simply green. So his openness about his growing affection encourages her to trust other people. She starts to trust more genuine people like Glinda, and that's mutual. And through their relationship, she gains this sense of belonging and confidence and emotional support. Research has found that people with insecure attachments that we talked about before can greatly benefit from having a positive influence with their partner, and that can help to bring them out of their shell as well. Labelling theory is something that I'm really passionate about, and I talked a lot about in my thesis in terms of using person-first language. So I will never say that someone is an offender. I will always say someone with an offending history. And I think it's really important to remember that we are not the worst thing that we've done, but we are factors and contributions of what's happened throughout our lives. She says to Glinda when they're singing for good, don't look at me through your eyes, look at me through theirs, meaning she understands that everybody else sees her as a certain thing. So Goffman, who's a big stigma researcher, argues that this individual self-concept and identity is developed through these social interactions, and it relies on how others perceive and define her back. It's called a looking glass concept, and it's central to kind of the idea that individuals base themselves on who they are by the views of others and how others see them. It could be seen as a self-fulfilling prophecy, which I'll go on to in a second. And the core premise of labelling theory is that no act is fundamentally deviant until this has been placed on them by somebody else, and there's that kind of judgment about their behaviour, which comes into kind of the social construct of deviance as well. So in terms of labelling, labelling and stereotypes within the film, she's wicked is what other people are saying about Elphaba. The self-fulfilling prophecy of her then admitting in no good deed that I'm wicked through and through, and ultimately resulting in her turning around to Glinda and saying, haven't you heard, I'm the Wicked Witch of the West. So she accepts the label that other people are putting on her. Other people in Oz would have you believe that the frustration-aggression hypothesis applies. I don't believe it is, but I think it's important to mention it. And this says that every aggressive act is underpinned by frustration. And they're saying because of Elphaba's sarcasm and because of her bluntness and because she doesn't understand people and because she's different and she's weird, she's frustrated. And that's why she's acting aggressively towards other people. It's actually people misinterpreting her behaviour as aggression that's the problem, but this theory is kind of an important one to bear in mind if we are thinking about others' perceptions of kind of frustration and aggression as a model. So I'm just going to finish off with kind of some overview of some more integrated theories that we would talk about in psychology, because we would never attempt to define somebody by one theory or one core element of psychology. The biopsychosocial model was originally proposed as a medical model. Mark will know this. But it soon developed into kind of a psychology model of integrating this all together. So think about what I said at the start about those kind of chemical imbalances or the abuse that a mother had when she was pregnant. Then the psychological concepts of these cognitive styles, personality traits, and trauma, and then leading into all those social interactions. So Engel would argue that this is a combination approach to all of them, and this is probably one of the strongest theories that we kind of have in psychology as a kind of robust dynamic model. This is a personal favourite of mine. It might be a little bit small, but hopefully you guys can see that. I think it's okay. So in-group and out-group theory is something that I talked about within my PhD as well. So the in-group is a group that they belong to, and that they're kind of identifying with positively. Whereas the out-group are the people that are seen as different or inferior or threatening. So in this case, it's Elphaba and kind of the animals that can speak. And they also say in, I'm not sure if it's in For Good or no, it might be in Thank Goodness, the song. And someone says, I hear that rebel animals are giving her food and shelter. And they're saying that all of the animals in Alpha are basically a gang at this point, and they are the out-group. In terms of that reinforcement and strengthening of that theory, the people that are in the in-group will usually be kind of like the socially attractive individuals, the ones that are kind of going along with the dominant power structure. So in this case, it could be the Shiz University students, the Munchkins, Galinda, and they maintain that power by staying as part of that solid identity and contrasting themselves from Elphaba. Rumours and labels, such as Elphaba being wicked, they create this shared narrative which justifies the actions towards the out-group. Then othering and the outcome, so the system rewards the people that are in group for their loyalty, and it endorses that. You don't get any reward for being in the out group, so people are going to want to be in that in-group desirability. Elphaba challenges the wizard, who most people don't want to challenge and don't kind of identify with. They refuse to conform kind of to the social injustice and going along with the animals being caged and losing their voice. And this reinforces her dangerousness and increases her status in the out group. So I want to mention negative attribution bias here as well, which is it's kind of leading on to this. People going on throughout March of the Witch Hunters about evil effectively being eliminated, and they will eliminate it by getting rid of Elphaba. So this is a cognitive bias where people tend to interpret the behaviour of others in the most negative way possible. So it could be that behaviours are ambiguous, so they're unclear. So instead of saying, oh, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, they just go straight to that person is evil, bad, wicked in this case. Sometimes it's accidental, but they can be perceived as threatening, and that reinforces the negativity. In the case of Elphaba, it can be applied in kind of a number of ways throughout the film, where her behaviour is actually helping behaviour, and people see this as further kind of endorsement that she's wicked. I've got 5 examples that are going to come up. Does anyone want to have a go at suggesting what any of those examples are? No one got any thoughts? It's probably a spoiler again for some people that haven't seen it. So at Shiz University, she tries to stop somebody from pushing her sister's wheelchair and ultimately causes quite a lot of chaos. Like I mentioned before, the lion's cowardliness is due to Elphaba trying to help him. This is Chistery, who's the leader of the monkey guard who turn into the flying monkeys. She gives them wings as part of a spell that the wizard asked her to do, but then she is seen as evil for doing that. Spoiler alert again, me and Bok. So Bok, who is one of the Munchkins, who is encouraged to kind of go with Nessa Rose, who is Elphaba's sister, to the dance. Ultimately, he is in love with Galinda, but it's unrequited love again. This is one of the themes of the film. And Nessa Rose tries to put a spell on him from the Grimmerly when she realizes he's not in love with her. And she says, if you've lost your heart to someone else, I'll give you no heart. And she sets a spell on him, which ultimately nearly kills him. So Elphaba tries to save him, but you can't undo a spell from the Grimmerly. The only way she can save him is to make him into the Tin Man. So again, look what she's done to me, I'm the Tin Man. Well, you were either dead or you were the Tin Man, so that's your choice. And then, like I said before, Fiyero, she tries to save him. He helps Elphaba because they're in love. And then he is beaten up by the Gale Guards. And ultimately, she thinks he's going to die, so she does her Elikanarman Armin Archin Elikanarman spell, and he becomes the Scarecrow. So that wasn't just gobbledygook, by the way. That is part of the song, for those of you that don't know. And I do scream that one in the kitchen frequently. So, in Thank Goodness, which is a song all about, it's great to be good, isn't it? These are some of kind of like the made-up perceptions of Elphaba. So the Munchkins say, I hear she has an extra eye that always remains awake. She can shed her skin as easily as a snake. Her soul is so unclean that pure water can melt her. There is absolutely no evidence for any of this. I don't know who started these rumors, false accusations, but she uses this last one to her advantage. Because people think that she can be melted by water, she uses that to an advantage, and she kind of sets it up by putting the pail next to where Dorothy is. And the only thing she wants of Dorothy is the shoes that were her sister's that Galinda stole when Madame Marble made the house land on her sister died, and then Galinda takes her shoes and gives them to Dorothy. I would be annoyed as well and be like, I'm sorry, why just give you shoes to some like random girl whose house landed on my sister? So that's obviously a different context in The Wizard of Oz. But I would be pretty mad. But she uses that to her advantage and leaves the bucket of water. Then when Dorothy throws it on her, she pretends, I'm melting, oh, what a whirl. She kind of goes into the floor, and ultimately Galinda and everybody else think that she's dead, and then she's able to escape with Fiyero. But she uses that kind of myth against her to her advantage in that sense. March of the Witch Hunters, another personal favourite of mine and Charlotte's. Somebody said to me, why don't you use a video? Put a video of you and Charlotte doing that. No, we're not doing that. But wickedness must be punished is part of the March of the Witch Hunters when they all gather with the kind of torches and the pitchforks, and they decide they're going to go after Elphaba, and ultimately the punishment is death in this sense. PG movie. So the Ozians' desire to punish Elphaba by means of killing her is understood through several kind of theories of punishment. I just want to mention this, obviously, as a researcher in forensic psychology. Retribution is about moral payback, so punishing someone because people believe that they've done wrong. So they're justified in that. The wizard and Madame Morrible have set out this agenda to blame Elphaba for everything in order to cover up this corruption that is happening as a result of them, but they blame Elphaba for it. The people could never believe that the wizard was a fraud. He says this when he's talking, when he's singing the song Wonderful, and he says, there's no point, everyone thinks I'm wonderful, you may as well just be wonderful with me, rather than us all being evil, let's all be wonderful. So Elphaba kind of gets on board until she sees that he is obviously abusing the animals. People feel morally justified in wanting her dead because it restores this balance of justice. We know that not in this country, thankfully, but in other countries they do still have the death penalty, which is justified by something called the just world hypothesis, which links the idea that if people are inherently evil, they need to kind of be removed in order to prevent this from happening. Galinda also sings, isn't it nice to know that good will conquer evil? Again, this idea of good and evil being two distinct things, which it's not. We know it is more of a spectrum and people fluctuate between them. But deterrence aims to stop other people from copying bad behaviours. So again, one of the other lyrics in, I think it's No Good Deed, through our lives our children learn what they miss when they misbehave. So if people are bad, you miss out. In the case of Elphaba, if you're bad, you die. So that's kind of how extreme it gets to this point. It must be protected to maintain kind of social order, and this links to kind of social control and functionalist theories, and the dehumanization that can be applied to Elphaba. So like I said before about calling somebody an offender, it's easier to do that because it removes them. They're not like me, they're an offender and I'm not, so it removes people from that group. In the sense of this, it's the fact that every time Galinda tries to mention Elphaba's name after she's kind of done the spell on the monkeys, Madame Morrible will not refer to her as Elphaba. Every time Galinda says Elphaba, she goes, the Wicked Witch of the West, the Wicked Witch of the West. And she becomes this kind of different entity to other people, and that just keeps getting reinforced, that she's no longer has that individual identity, she's something else, and she is evil. So I just wanted to put this kind of up there as we come to kind of finishing this off, that there's this kind of good to evil or good to wicked spectrum that's presented throughout the film, where on this side we have Galinda. She isn't just good, she is the goodliest, apparently. That's a word, I'm going to start trying to use that. She is the goodliest, and Elphaba is the most wicked, the Wicked Witch of the West. But this isn't a simple spectrum. We know in the film that this shifts and it flicks multiple times. There's a lot of times in the film where actually Elphaba is the goodest and Galinda is actually the most wicked. She gives Elphaba the hat as a bit of a kind of passive-aggressive bullying kind of move as well, where she has this black hat that her auntie's given her and she doesn't want it. So she says to Elphaba, oh, this would go with your outfit, it's so nice, so nice. And she's actually laughing about her with her friends. There's a lot of things that Galinda kind of does in the film where this spectrum can shift. So just think about that in life. People aren't inherently good or wicked. We all have the capacity to be good and to be wicked. This ultimately leads Elphaba for obviously saying this in Defying Gravity. If I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free. So she's kind of admitted to herself that nobody understands me. If I am wicked, I'm just going to have to live my life on my own. And at least I'm free. At least I'm able to be who I want to be. And it's quite upsetting that that's how she feels her life has to be. In terms of linking this to kind of practical applications of psychology, because it's all well and good to apply it to a case study, but what does that actually mean? Elphaba isn't real, but there are a lot of people in the criminal justice system. So thinking about this in reality, In terms of understanding behaviour, how the core psychology maps onto kind of theories and research, hopefully I've taught you that today. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about that and you can take that away. In terms of specialisms, you can study when you do psychology, child developmental, educational, forensic, counselling psychology. So if you are interested in this, I know some of you already do, some of you are thinking about it, we offer several psychology pathways. They are accredited by the British Psychological Society, which is a requirement that you need to have. So these are our undergraduate pathways. Currently, the forensic psychology is the only stage 1, so it gets you the first stage in your route to qualifying as a registered forensic psychologist. Myself and Carol run that programme. The psychology conversion, so if some of you are sitting here and you're like, I don't want to do another 3-year degree, and obviously I can't teach you everything you need to know in an hour. So if you're thinking about maybe getting a more of a flavour of psychology, thinking about applying that, if you already have a degree that's a kind of good level degree, you're able to do a psychology conversion, which gives you all of this content in 1 year rather than doing an undergraduate degree. So that's a really nice offer for people that maybe want to come and study psychology and kind of convert their undergraduate degree. We also offer something a bit different. So we do the MRes in emerging psychology. There's a few students with us today who are currently on that for the first year. And there's also some other options like postgraduate diplomas in kind of counselling and behavioural psychotherapy. So if you're interested in that, then you can contact the course leader because there's slightly different requirements for that course as well. So just to support the university and just kind of a reminder of what we do here. So we are very teaching intensive, research informed, assessment enabled. Good advertisement for what we kind of package as what's called TIRI at this university. So we do like to embed things like this. I do it particularly within my teaching where I will kind of showcase examples. I will ask students to do it. This is actually an assessment on the Forensic Psychology Masters where I ask people to pick a case study and apply kind of like the psychological theory. So the people that come into the Masters, there's no excuse now. You've got this one as an example. They only get 15 minutes though. They don't get over an hour. So we're a top 40 university and we're rated first in the Northwest for student satisfaction. And that has been the case for quite a while now. So if you want to learn more about our courses, we are moving to a program in psychology where there won't be any exams. It's very interactive. We really want you guys to be able to embed that learning and really showcase what you've learned on the course and apply it to case studies that are really of interest to you rather than just making you kind of sit exams for the sake of it. So some reflections I'm hopeful that you'll take away from today's talk. The next time that you judge somebody based on something that they've done or the way that they look, think about it. Try and think about some of the theories. I don't expect you to stand there and go, I'm judging you because of confirmation bias. Just give me 1 sec. Okay, carry on. But just try and think about that. Try and process kind of your own privileges and your own experiences and think about the way that you're reacting. A lot of our experiences shape us as people, and it's important to kind of do our part in understanding that and understanding each other so we can live as a better society. You never know the full extent of what somebody has been through, and I don't expect you to sit down with every stranger you meet and say, let's talk about your childhood trauma, but just be mindful of that. Just be mindful that people have experiences that you won't know about. So let's answer the question then. That's what everyone's here for. So are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? I'm going to give a bit of a political answer. So wicked is a label and it's a matter of perception. So I can't answer that question because wicked does not exist, ultimately, is my conclusion. Therefore, nobody can be born wicked. People are capable of wickedness, of wicked things, but that does not make them an entity, and wickedness as a person. This leads to othering, and it's not useful or kind of appropriate in society, although there still is a lot of it, obviously. So there can be things that increase someone's likelihood to be wicked and commit more wicked acts compared to other people. I just want to thank the university, thanks everyone online for joining. A special thanks to Mark, who's been here for about 3 hours trying to sort all of this out. So thank you so much for that, Mark. Thank you to my colleagues for coming and supporting the event. I've only been at the university for 12 months, and they've been very welcoming, very supportive. And this is a pilot series, like I said at the start. If people are interested in this, we're thinking about maybe applying this more to looking at kind of areas of counselling, getting more of like a panel together, thinking about how to apply therapeutic interventions, inviting our colleagues that are in more of the arts. In medicine, I was having a conversation with someone in law the other day about possibly getting a criminal law perspective and make this more of a session. But I also just want to thank my long-suffering family for bearing with me through this as well, my fiance, my friends, and I will just say that so much of me is made from what I learned from you, which is also from Wicked. So I do believe that I have changed for the better, and hopefully by listening to this session, you have also been changed for good and you can understand this a little bit more. So please, if you can scan this, the drinks are still available. So if you can scan this for me, you don't have to do it right now, but there's just a couple of questions, about 5 questions. It'd be really useful for us to know what you've learned from this, what you liked, if there's anything else that you would like to see. It's the first time we've ever done something like this, so let us know what your feedback is. And there's an optional box at the bottom, so it's anonymous, but if you do put your details in the bottom, obviously it won't be anonymous anymore. But if you want to be contacted about future events, or you would like a follow-up about any courses or anything like that, just pop your name in that box at the bottom and I'll be able to reach out to you next week when I've had a lie down. But has everyone got that? If you haven't, I'll pop it up again. I'll send the link around on an email as well to everybody. I'll just give people a second to kind of get that. And people online can do that as well. If you want to scan the screen, that's fine as well. Just let us know that you're online and not in person. So if there's any questions or any thoughts anyone would like to share, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Anyone got any questions? Or has anyone got any thoughts? Do people agree with my conclusion? Does anyone think that people are born wicked? Both. Yeah, it's always both, isn't it? It's always like the combination. My students. Yeah, it's really important to be mindful of that, and obviously, especially with forensic, just to kind of remember, like I said before, about that being a spectrum, and we've all got the capacity to do it, but as we always say in forensic psychology, it's not about the possibility. Everybody has the possibility to do wicked things. It's about understanding the probability, and that's what happens when we do risk assessments. We don't just say, well, everyone could be it, so we'll give everyone a high rating. We look at all of these factors to kind of think about that when we're talking about risk assessments, which is something that you'd kind of go through if you were on a forensic pathway. Yeah? You have to speak loud for me. Yeah, I'll repeat the question just so people online can hear it, just in case. But the question was mainly around, are people who have kind of early childhood trauma or experiences often either misdiagnosed or not diagnosed with kind of neurodivergence or elements of that? Is that correct? So just to preface that I'm not qualified to diagnose people with conditions like that, just to say, but through the research and kind of my understanding of it, childhood experiences, like I said, that neurodivergence is developmental and kind of biological, that you would think that there would definitely be contributing factors to somebody being diagnosed. But I think about some of the people that I worked with when I was in forensic mental health as a healthcare worker, and I think a few of those people hadn't been diagnosed because it was put down to their trauma, and it was like it's an appropriate trauma response. And there is something called the power, threat, meaning framework, which looks at not kind of medicalizing people's trauma and people's experiences. So looking at it more as an appropriate trauma response compared to being diagnosed. Equally, on the flip side, though, it might present as a little bit of a gaslight if you're saying, well, it's just your trauma, you don't meet this boundary. So there's differences within the research, kind of looking at that, yes, people can be misdiagnosed, but sometimes if people have trauma kind of early in their life, it can sometimes also lead to the development of personality disorders, which is not obviously neurodivergence, that's something slightly different. So again, it was a bit of a non-answer to your question because the research is quite diverse on it, but we are getting better at diagnosing neurodiversity and kind of understanding that. We know there's like a backlog, and in terms of Elphaba, she's probably more kind of on the remit of autism or ADHD or ODHD. They're kind of the presence of what was coming up, kind of thinking about her as a character, but there's no point in diagnosing fictional characters, but it was worth mentioning that those things do kind of resonate throughout that story, and a lot of people kind of identify with that. Does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you for asking. Any other questions? Yeah.
It's not really a question, Sam, but I'd just like to congratulate you on presenting it this way through the eyes of films, because I've never been to a lecture that's presented presented it in that way. And even though I haven't seen Wicked, as you know, we didn't put our hands up when we discussed that on the way, because of the descriptions you gave as you went along, it made it much more real.
Yeah.
It made it, you were able to attribute it much more to you know, what went on in that film or what that was. So I think that's is it something that you thought of?
I do it sometimes in my lectures. Obviously, I'm not allowed to do a 3-hour lecture on that every time, so they'd be frowned upon with the BPS criteria and certain things I have to teach. But I will sometimes have a case study, especially with the master's students, where I'll ask them to kind of develop that area of critical thought. And I'll say, thinking about this, you can pick a real case study or you can look at that, because it's equally beneficial to use kind of access. We have so much access to so many films. For the people on YouTube, I was just getting a compliment about my presentation of this through films from my neighbour Chris. So yeah, I think it's really useful to do that and use it as a kind of teaching and learning tool, because we have access to this. Not everybody will come from a perspective of, if I started talking about real serial killers and things like that, it can be triggering for some people. Some people aren't on a forensic pathway and it might not be appropriate. But this kind of a case study is appropriate for everybody, not depending on what pathway you're on. You just have to have that basic level of understanding about psychology. So hopefully I've just helped people to kind of take away that, and by kind of implementing it and seeing it in a certain way, you might be more likely to remember it than me just go, everyone come here, I'll just teach you about psychology. It's not as useful as kind of embedding that, and hopefully the next time that you kind of, if you go and watch this film now, you'll be kind of thinking about what I've said, and I'm just insufferable watching films and I'll just talk over them all the time. I'm one of those people. So this was my outlet. I've managed to get this out of my system now for a week, maybe, Hannah. And then I'll maybe start again. But it was really useful, and it'd be really good to get people's feedback on whether that was, because Chris comes from a nursing background, just telling everyone about Chris now. So does have obviously some experience of academia, but for those of you that maybe haven't, be useful to kind of know if that was digestible to you, or if it could have been done slightly better. Really useful feedback for me. Any other questions? Thank you, Chris. Yes. That's a really good question. So just for the people on YouTube, I was just asked that, obviously I said it's not useful to just use one theory to explain the entirety of someone's behaviour, but is there one that I've put into my presentation that I kind of think is the most pressing theory that contributes to it? And I've changed this and added to it so much. I thought it was maybe too much. I've cut things out. There's things I've not put in here that I wanted to put in here, but trying to keep it kind of like to the time. I think that the social theories for me are the most significant. I really do think that labelling theory and self-fulfilling prophecy is probably the biggest one here, and that's also the biggest one that I kind of talk about with my students, especially as someone who teaches forensic psychology. If you label somebody as an offender, the research has shown that they will be more likely to continue to behave in that way, whereas you label someone with an offending history or someone with that experience, it can help with the rehabilitation process. It can help with them understanding their own behaviour, and it just helps them be seen as people rather than as the worst thing that they've done. So I really do think that, and Elphaba fights against it. I'm not sure if I could fight against it that much when people are continually just calling her wicked and calling her wicked. And she does try a couple of times to kind of convince them, and her friend Galinda tries to say, I will tell people that you're not. And she goes, it's not worth it. Just kind of carry on, it's already been kind of set. And I think that just kind of shows when people who have an offending history kind of get to the end of their limit and they just go, do you know what, yeah, whatever. And that might lead to further recidivism and increase the kind of reoffending rate. So for me, I feel like it's kind of labelling theory and the self-fulfilling prophecy and the social kind of perceptions around that. But I would say that because that's my main research area. But it was a really good question. Thank you for that. Any other questions, Mother? Oh, that's sweet, isn't it?
This presentation can be given to any normal person like me, not necessarily somebody who's studying. I understood it completely. It does make you realise
Yeah.
different ways of things, but you've just done it so perfectly.
Yeah. Got no excuse now. Got no excuse now. So yeah, just thinking about, you know, what we know as people, like people don't have access to education, and acknowledging our privilege to just be here today as well. Like some people, we know there's a poverty kind of with technology. Some people still don't have access to the internet and won't be able to access information like this. So, you know, it's kind of your job as people that have consumed this today to go away and try and digest some of that to friends, to family members. Next time somebody labels somebody, or even if you want to go and watch the film and then not tell people that you've seen this, then just keep going, do you know what? That's availability bias. That's a heuristic. That's a schema. And like, what are you talking about? But just kind of thinking about what you've learned, and do take that away. I always say to my students, if you learn one thing from me, it's to be more confident. It's to be more confident in challenging other people. Don't have to challenge people as much as I do, starting debates about the death penalty at Christmas Day with my granddad. But kind of thinking about how you can open up conversations to put psychology into every day, because we're all human, and as long as we're all human and we speak to other humans, psychology is applicable to everybody. And that's why I love what I do, and that's why I love teaching psychology, and I've really enjoyed kind of making this accessible to you guys and being able to kind of put two of my passions together and deliver this. So I think I've got time for one more question if anyone has any other questions. Yeah, Mark, Tom. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll just repeat that again for everybody else. So if we take the wizard and Madame Morrible out of the situation, because they're the ones that are causing a lot of the corruption that's then kind of reflected into Elphaba, a lot of the kind of wickedness within the film is from the ignorance and the inability of other people to kind of challenge that. And again, that just links to what I've just said in terms of, if you don't challenge things like that, if you're kind of watching people speak about people in minoritized groups and not speaking up for them or not sharing the knowledge that you have access to. We've come a long way as a society in reducing stigma, changing kind of language. So, you know, if somebody takes their own life, it's not committed suicide, it's died by suicide. There's a lot of labeling and language. We've come quite a long way to try and change some of that. And I think being ignorant to it and going along with what other people are saying is just as bad. There's a famous quote, I don't know who it's by, I think it's, I'm going to say Eleanor Roosevelt, but that might not be right, where it says, you know, wickedness comes from good people doing nothing and kind of seeing the injustice. And I think that was around some of the things that happened during World War II and the Holocaust as well. So, you know, if you see something that happens, not to sound like British transport police, but, you know, see it, say it, sort it, with psychology, but try and implement what you've learned. And yeah, you're right, being ignorant to things and just pretending it doesn't matter to you. Well, if it doesn't matter to you, it matters to somebody else. It matters to people that are in marginalised or minority groups. So I think that's a really good point to end on. Thanks, Tom. So thank you. You've got 10 minutes to grab yourself a final drink if you want to, and mingle. And then, yeah, I'll be around if anyone wants to chat to me. Thank you, everyone. Yes. I'll just switch my microphone off.